In our ongoing effort this month to unmask domestic violence, we're devoting the next half hour to our newscast to leading the discussion on what domestic violence looks like in our communities and how all of us can play a part in addressing what it is. So, our panel today are domestic violence survivors and folks who work with people who have been in domestic violence situations. So we have a survivor and a nationally certified domestic violence advocate, Karen Alston. Welcome to you. We have Constance Hogan, Detective Constance Hogan. She's with the Savannah Police Department, their Family Violence Unit. Thank you for being here. And then we have Pastor Candace Hardnett. She is the chair of Proud Savannah. Thank you. We just saw you in a story we just ran. And then, of course, Mary Jo Horton, the Behavioral Health Manager at Memorial Health. She also does our weekly Wellness Wednesday segments with us here on First News at 4. Thank you all for being here today. So there are so many types of domestic violence. Today we're focusing on intimate partner violence. Karen, I want to start with you. You are a survivor. Domestic violence usually follows a pattern of behavior, we have learned. But we so often hear people say, well, why didn't you see it coming? So if it is a pattern of behavior, but so many people don't see it, what would you say about picking up on signs, or is it really just not that simple?
It's really not that simple, because when you get into relationships, it's all about the emotions. It's all about how you care about the person and how the person is actually treating you, to that it becomes blindsided. And then all of a sudden you find yourself in a situation where you're asking, because I ask myself, how did I get caught up into this situation? I was that type of person that would say, this will never ever happen to me until it did happen to me. And then it was too late. And then I was so involved in it to that I didn't even want anyone to know that I was living behind closed doors in such a violent lifestyle.
And Mary Jo, you and I have talked about that before, that you get caught up in it and then you're in it and you're scared to say anything about it.
Right, people think that it's a certain type of woman that this is vulnerable, and that's not the truth. It's the process actually beats you down and kind of breaks you down emotionally. And so really any one of us is vulnerable to engaging, because all the things that we think of in terms of becoming intimate with somebody is being vulnerable and open, and those are the things that then harm us.
There are different types of domestic violence, but physical violence is definitely one of the major types. You deal with that on pretty much a daily basis with your job at Savannah Police Department. Give us an idea, Detective Hogan, of what it is you see here in our community.
Well, we have domestic violence can be an array of different things. It can start out as financial or isolation, and then it can escalate into that physical violence where it can turn into maybe some minor things like property damage or, keeping resources from them, whether it be taking a vehicle or property from them so they can't use it, depriving them of that property. And so then it can get into even the more physical types from, acts of punching or hitting or strangulation, cuttings, shootings, and sometimes ultimately death.
Do you often encounter victims who, like we've heard here, they're in it and they don't want to talk about it and they don't want to, we hear, I don't want to press charges?
So that's usually the second step after I get there. So when I normally talk to victims, everything is still just happen. And like she said earlier, in the beginning of the relationship, it's not about seeing those signs, because it's kind of like love bombing. They can do no wrong. They make the victim out to be as this perfect person, and then they slowly work in those breaking down of them. I can see why no one wants to be with you. I can see why your family has nothing to be with you. I can see why you have no friends and nobody has wanted to stay with you forever. And then from the psychological side, also depriving them of the resources that they need. Well, I don't really want to be around your family because they think that I'm such a horrible person because of the lies that you fed them.
That's that isolation we hear so much about.
Yes.
All right, so Pastor Hardnett, from the LGBTQ community, it is a complex issue in that community because, yes, there's partner-on-partner violence, there is violence in the home from parents to young people who they don't accept, but then there is a particular form of violence among transgender people, against transgender people on the domestic violence front, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, the dynamics are endless. You know, a lot of times victims feel that they are to blame for whatever has just transpired or happened, and the perpetrator makes them feel that way, that you made me do this, you made me hit you, or you made me get to this point with you. Had you done XYZ, then I would not have done XYZ. And so we see this in the transgender community, but not just transgender individuals, but gay, lesbian, bisexual, straight. Everyone, anyone is susceptible to being abused.
What she talked about, the "you made me do it," Mary Jo, is that gaslighting? We've talked about gaslighting.
Absolutely. And it's like you're questioning the reality that you know existed, except that you're so isolated that the only other person you're getting feedback from is the person that's convincing you that you're seeing it incorrectly. And so at some point you attach to them for your sense of safety and your sense of sanity, even though they're the ones that are causing you to feel so unsafe and insane at times.
Yeah, Pastor, I want to ask you something. I want to come back to you, and Karen, I want you to weigh in on this too. We hear this a lot, and I, as a black man, I hear it in the black community, is, well, just pray and go to church about it, and it'll be okay, baby.
Right.
You hear that a lot, and no.
Exactly,
Yeah.
no. You know, and I've heard of instances, not at my church, we don't handle domestic violence in that way, but I've heard of instances where people are actually encouraged because the Bible says that once you make a commitment to stay with someone or to be with someone, that is forever, there till death do us part. And so people are convinced that they must stay in these abusive relationships. And the one caveat to that, as many people will say, is if there's infidelity. And that simply is not true, even biblically.
Karen, so did you hear that in your experience? And then what do you tell people who you help when it comes to that?
Well, actually, what I learned from it is going through a situation, and I was told that I needed to fast and pray and remember my vow. But because I believed in fasting and praying and understanding that portion, when I fast and pray for 3 days, then what came to me was what God puts together that no man put asunder. So then I realized that God did not put this together. So I didn't ask permission. I didn't seek that this was the right person for me. So then people have to individually decide what is right for them. A lot of times we put ourselves into situations that was never meant for us. And so that's how I came out of my situation, because others were telling me different things, like, yes, you should submit yourself to this, but you have to fight within yourself to come out of these things so that you know that you're not getting wrong teachings.
Talking about coming out of the situation, Detective Hogan, from a police standpoint, when you all are brought into these situations, what are you telling victims about getting out and making a different choice if they can? What do you?
So we offer them resources. We come out, we see if, you know, if they're comfortable at home, if the offender has been taken into custody, you know, that's fine. But we also make sure that they're aware that there's other resources, such as going to family members' house. Safe Shelter is out there for them. So if they decide at any point, you know, wherever they go or whether they stay home, if they don't feel safe, that is a resource. They can go 24/7, 365 days a year. And not only that, but they offer resources outside of just the Safe Shelter in itself. They offer resources to help them get protection orders, so that just that bond condition that nobody else might know about, that TPO, if they get that protection order, that's all 50 states. So if they leave here and they go to another state and that offender comes in contact with them, that protection order is there for them.
I don't think a lot of people know. I didn't know that. I have had a protection order against someone in my 20s. I didn't know that it applied to all 50 states. That's good to know. Mary Jo, we've talked about, and we're running out of time for this segment, we're going to come back with more, but we've talked about loving someone, offering help if they're in this situation, but not intervening.
No, I mean, we can't assume that we know what's best for somebody else, and we cannot assume that what we think is help is what they need. Being a loving and supportive person is not taking control over somebody's life and decision making.
Okay, all right.
That's good.
Isn't that good?
Yes.
And
that is-
sometimes that is the most deadly time, is when a victim leaves the relationship.
Yes.
The statistics prove that that is the most deadly portion, is when victims end up getting killed, is when they're trying to leave their offender.
Which
Absolutely.
is why you let yourself be known that you are there to help, offer help.
Absolutely.
And it's why we're doing this today as well. Thank you all so much. We're